The normal morning news shows on Earth suddenly stopped. Every screen, from the tiny wrist devices to the massive billboards in Times Square, showed the same image. A tall alien with bug-like eyes that glowed blue and green stood at what looked like a fancy podium. "People of Earth," the alien said in a deep voice that had been translated into human languages, "I am Ambassador Zixka of the Vexari Dominion. I speak for the Galactic Confederacy today." In the United Nations building in New York, world leaders sat watching the same broadcast on the main screen. Some looked worried, but others seemed strangely calm. The peace treaty signed 3,000 years ago between humanity and the 27 species of the Galactic Confederacy has now expired, continued Ambassador Zixka. His many jointed fingers tapped against the podium. "We have chosen not to renew it. The ancient scores must be settled. The Confederacy hereby declares war on humanity." The alien seemed to pause for dramatic effect, clearly expecting gasps of horror or cries of fear. Instead, a small chuckle came from the back of the UN chamber, then another. Soon, many of the human representatives were smiling or openly laughing. General Helena Chen, a short woman with gray hair and the most decorated military officer on Earth, stood up from her seat. She walked calmly to the response podium, straightened her uniform, and smiled. "Ambassador Zixke," she said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber, "perhaps you should reconsider." The alien's compound eyes flickered in what appeared to be confusion. "You find this amusing? The might of 27 advanced civilizations now stands against you." General Chen smiled wider. "Yes, we find it amusing. Very much so." The Vexari ambassador's antennae quivered with what seemed like anger. "You are an infant species. Your civilization has barely left its home system. Our smallest battle fleet could turn your cities to ash." "Could it?" asked General Chen, still smiling. "Are you absolutely certain about that?" For the first time, Ambassador Zixka seemed uncertain. "Our intelligence reports." "Your intelligence reports show exactly what we wanted them to show," interrupted Chen. "For 3,000 years, you've watched us build exactly what your treaty allowed us to build. Nothing more." The human representatives were no longer laughing. They were watching with proud smiles. "What you never understood about humans," continued Chen, "is that we never stopped preparing for war. We just got very, very good at hiding it." The alien delegation whispered among themselves nervously. "While maintaining peace, we fought 1,000,000 wars in our minds, in our games, in our stories," said Chen. "We've defeated enemies far more terrifying than you could ever be." Chen leaned forward slightly. "Ambassador, we respect your right to declare war, but we strongly suggest you reconsider, not for our sake, but for yours." On screens across Earth, billions of humans watched this exchange. There was no panic in the streets, no rushing to bunkers. In Central Park, a couple spread out a picnic blanket and opened a bottle of wine. "Do you think it'll be a long war?" asked the woman, pouring 2 glasses. "Nah," replied her partner, accepting a glass. "I give it a week, tops." Above them, the sky remained peaceful and blue. But in orbit and beyond, things were already beginning to change. Dr. Marcus Okafor wiped dust from his glasses as he moved deeper into the underground library beneath Geneva. The air was cool and dry to protect the ancient paper documents and early digital storage devices. His footsteps echoed in the silent halls. "It has to be here somewhere," he muttered to himself. As Earth's top expert in alien history, Marcus had been called immediately after the Vexari ambassador's war declaration. His job was simple but important: find out why the aliens were so confident they could win. He stopped at a section marked Pre-Treaty Era and began searching. Most people didn't know that humans had met aliens before the peace treaty 3,000 years ago. That first meeting had been kept secret from the public. Found it. Marcus carefully pulled out an old metal box. Inside was a small data cube that still worked with modern computers. He plugged it into his tablet and began reading. The screen lit up with images that made his eyes widen. 3,000 years ago, a small fleet of Confederacy scout ships had discovered Earth. Thinking humans were primitive, they had attacked a small human colony on Mars. To their surprise, the humans fought back with unexpected skill and creativity. The aliens retreated, shocked by the defeat. "So that's why they offered the peace treaty," Marcus whispered. "They were afraid of us even back then." The records contained brain scans of humans compared to other alien species. The alien scientists had been terrified by what they found. Human brains showed unique patterns when fighting, a strange mix of creativity, aggression, and adaptability that no other species possessed. "The species shows alarming combat potential," read one alien report. "If allowed to develop naturally, humans could become the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy within a few thousand years. Containment is recommended." Marcus laughed as he realized what had happened. The peace treaty hadn't been a friendly gesture. It had been a cage designed to keep humanity from growing too powerful. The treaty had strict limits on what weapons humans could build and how far they could expand into space. But the aliens had made a huge mistake. While obeying the treaty's exact words, humans had never stopped thinking about war. They created games, movies, and simulations about conflict. They built technologies that could be used for peace, but quickly converted to weapons. They trained their minds while pretending to be focused only on art and commerce. For 3,000 years, humanity had been preparing, not with actual weapons, but with something more powerful: knowledge and creativity. Marcus quickly gathered the most important files and rushed toward the exit. He needed to share what he had discovered with General Chen and the Defense Council. As he emerged from the underground archive, his phone buzzed with an alert. The Vexari fleet had been spotted approaching Earth's orbit. "They really have no idea what they're getting into," Marcus said, smiling as he hurried toward the waiting helicopter. In the sky above, the first alien ships were becoming visible as small dots of light. Around the world, humans looked up not with fear, but with a strange excitement. The 3,000-year waiting game was finally over. Captain Amara Rodriguez sat in the command chair of the EDS Thermopylae, a ship that looked like a simple cargo vessel from the outside. According to official records, it was just that: a ship that carried goods between Earth and its moon colonies. The Vexari watchers had seen it make this trip hundreds of times. What they didn't know was that the Thermopylae had never carried a single crate of cargo. "Captain, the Vexari fleet has entered Earth orbit," said her first officer, Lieutenant Kim. "They're spreading out into attack formation. 17 capital ships, about 50 smaller vessels." Amara nodded calmly. "Right on schedule." On the main screen, the alien ships looked impressive. They were massive crystal-like structures that glowed with strange blue energy. Each one was at least 10 times larger than any human ship. According to the peace treaty, humans weren't allowed to build warships larger than the Thermopylae. "They're hailing all Earth ships," said Communications Officer Puddle. "They're ordering us to surrender or be destroyed." Amara smiled. Send no response. She pressed a small button on her chair's armrest. "This is Captain Rodriguez to all Earth Defense Force ships. Activate Chimera Protocol. I repeat, activate Chimera Protocol." Throughout the solar system, change began to happen. Satellites that had been marked as weather monitoring suddenly dropped their outer covers, revealing weapons systems. Space stations that appeared to be research outposts transformed, panels sliding away to expose missile launchers and energy cannons. Even the moon's surface changed as hidden doors opened in what had seemed to be natural craters, allowing defense platforms to rise up. Most impressive of all were the ships. Hundreds of them, hidden in plain sight for decades. Cargo vessels, passenger liners, and mining ships all changed shape as their true nature was revealed. Weapons extended, engines powered up, and shield systems activated. None of this technology had been illegal under the peace treaty. Humans had simply found creative ways to build dual-purpose systems that the aliens never noticed. On the Vexeri command ship, alarms began to sound. "Admiral," shouted a Vexeri officer, "we're detecting energy signatures all around us. The humans have weapons." The Vexeri admiral's compound eyes widened in shock. "Impossible. Our surveillance showed nothing like this." On Earth, people gathered in parks and on rooftops to watch the light show that was about to begin in the sky. Some brought snacks and drinks. Children pointed excitedly at the distant flashes of light as the two fleets engage. "Look at that," said a young boy in Central Park, pointing upward. "Is that our ship shooting?" His father nodded proudly. "Yes, those are the special ships we've been building in secret, the ones your mom helped design." "Cool." The boy took a bite of his hot dog. "Will the aliens be okay?" "Don't worry," his father assured him. "We won't destroy them. Just teach them a lesson." In orbit, the Vexeri fleet found itself surrounded on all sides by weapons they had never detected. The trap had been 3,000 years in the making, and it had just been sprung. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward in her chair. "All ships, commence operation. Show them what humanity has been hiding all these years." The Confederacy War Council met in an emergency session. 17 different alien species gathered in a large circular room aboard the massive flagship that had stayed safely behind the main Vexeri fleet. Angry voices filled the chamber as reports of the battle came in. "This is impossible," shouted the Vexeri ambassador Zixka, his normally smooth voice now cracked with anger. "How did they hide so many weapons? We've been watching them for 3,000 years." The holographic projector in the center of the room flickered to life. Admiral Jackson Lee of Earth appeared, his dark uniform crisp and his expression calm. The human looked almost amused. "Greetings, War Council," said Admiral Lee. "I see you've met our defense fleet." "This is a violation of the peace treaty," screeched a bird-like alien representative. "Humans were forbidden from building warships." Admiral Lee smiled. "Actually, we built no warships. We simply designed our civilian ships so they could change when needed. The treaty never forbade that." The aliens looked at each other in confusion. "But our scans," began Ambassador Zixka. "Your scans showed exactly what we wanted them to show," explained Lee. "You see, there's something unique about humans that you never understood. We are masters of deception." The Admiral touched a button, and the hologram changed to show various human entertainment. Movies showing elaborate special effects, stage magicians performing impossible tricks, and video games with realistic-looking alien invaders. While you watched us build simple ships and stations according to the treaty's rules, we were practicing the art of making things appear different than they truly are. Lee continued, "These are not military training videos. These are our entertainment." The War Council fell silent as they began to understand. "You have entire industries dedicated to deception," asked a small, glowing alien. "We call it entertainment," corrected Lee. "Movies, games, magic shows. Humans love to create illusions and solve puzzles. It's how we relax." An ancient gaseous being floated forward. This was the Draxel Counselor, one of the oldest members of the Confederacy. "I have studied human broadcasts," the Draxel said slowly. "They have thousands of stories about wars with aliens and the end of their world." "Exactly," said Admiral Lee. "Did you really think a species that could imagine 1,000 different apocalypses wouldn't prepare for a real one?" The alien council members looked at each other nervously. The Draxel continued, its voice trembling slightly. "Their games. Their children play games about space battles and conquering galaxies. And now those children have grown up," said Lee. "Some of them designed the very ships that are currently surrounding your fleet." The hologram changed again to show the battle. The once proud Vexeri fleet was now retreating, outmaneuvered by smaller but faster human vessels. "For 3,000 years, you thought the peace treaty was keeping us contained," said Admiral Lee. "In reality, it gave us time to perfect our strategies through games and stories, while building ships you never recognized as dangerous." The Vexeri ambassador's antennae drooped in defeat. "What happens now?" asked the ambassador. Admiral Lee's expression became serious. "That's up to you. We can continue this fight, or we can talk about a new kind of peace. One based on mutual respect, not fear." The War Council chamber fell silent as the aliens considered their options. Dr. Elizambiki walked into the meeting room aboard the neutral space station, where representatives from 17 alien species waited nervously. As Earth's top expert on alien psychology, she had been asked to explain something the aliens couldn't understand: how humans think about war. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting," she said with a friendly smile. The aliens shifted uncomfortably in their specially designed seats. A tall, blue-skinned alien spoke first. "We do not understand how you defeated our ship so easily. The Vexeri have won battles against much more advanced species than humans." "That's exactly what I'm here to explain," said Dr. Maki. She pressed a button, and images appeared on the wall screen. The first image showed a lion hunting a gazelle. On Earth, animals fight the way they evolved to fight. Predators hunt like their ancestors. Prey run like their ancestors. She changed the image to show different alien species. The Vexeri fight in swarms, just like the insects they evolved from. The Kefal use ambush tactics like the predators of their homeworld. The aliens nodded in agreement. "But humans," continued Dr. Mbiki, changing to an image of a chess tournament, "we fight with our minds, not our bodies." She showed more images: people playing video games, military officers studying maps, children playing tag. While keeping peace with the Confederacy, we created artificial conflicts to challenge ourselves. We fought millions of pretend wars against enemies we imagined, some even more powerful than your forces. A small, turtle-like alien raised a wrinkled hand. "You mean the entertainment broadcasts, the video games, and movies?" "Exactly," said Dr. Maki. "What you saw as simple entertainment, we used as training. Every time a human played a game about defending Earth from aliens, they were actually practicing strategy." She changed the screen to show footage from the recent battle. Human ships moved in formations that seemed chaotic, but were actually highly coordinated. "This battle plan," she explained, "was first tested in a popular game called Stellar Conquest 5 years ago. Millions of humans played it, finding flaws and improving the strategy each time. The aliens looked at each other with new understanding. So when we declared war," began the blue alien. "You challenged the most war-prepared species in the galaxy," finished Dr. Maki. "A species that has been fighting imaginary wars every day for 3,000 years. She showed one final image: a human family watching the sunset. "The strangest thing about humans is that we don't actually want war. We're happier building and creating than destroying. But we never stop preparing for threats, even during the longest peace." The room was quiet as the aliens processed this information. "Is this why your people laughed when we declared war?" asked the Vexari representative, his voice softer now. Dr. Mbiki nodded. "Imagine spending 3,000 years preparing for a test, only to have someone who hasn't studied at all challenge you to a competition. Wouldn't you laugh too?" For the first time since the meeting began, one of the aliens made a sound that might have been a chuckle. "Perhaps," said the ancient Draxel counselor, its gas-like body glowing slightly, "we should learn more about these human games before we consider our next move." The Confederacy was not ready to surrender yet. Their main fleets were now moving toward Earth from distant star systems. They still believed their superior numbers would win the war. In Shanghai, China, 20-year-old Jin Wei walked into what looked like a high-tech gaming center. The room was filled with comfortable chairs, large screens, and control panels that resembled video game controllers. 50 other young people were already there, putting on headsets and talking excitedly. "Why, over here," called his friend Layla. "Can you believe they call us in? This is actually happening." Jin Wei nodded, still amazed that he was here. Last week, he had been preparing for the World Championship of Stellar Dominion, his favorite space strategy game. Now he was being asked to help coordinate an actual space battle. A military officer walked to the front of the room. "Thank you all for coming. As the top-ranked players in tactical space simulation games, your skills are needed today." The officer pressed a button, and a 3D map of the solar system appeared, showing the positions of human ships and the approaching alien fleets. "This is not a simulation," the officer continued. "These are real-time positions of the Confederacy reinforcements. Your job is to coordinate our defensive fleets using the same skills you use in your games." Jin couldn't believe it. For years, his parents had complained that he was wasting his time playing games. Now those same games might help save Earth. Each gamer was assigned a section of space to defend. Jin's area was near Jupiter, where a large alien fleet was expected to arrive. "Remember," said the officer before leaving, "the controls are exactly like your game interfaces. The only difference is that real people are piloting these ships, so communicate clearly." Across the planet, in similar centers in Tokyo, London, Nairobi, and Sao Paulo, other gamers took their positions. The global defense network was being run by the very people who understood complex space tactics better than anyone: competitive gamers. On the Confederacy command ship, the alien general received reports of the approaching battle. "Our main fleet will arrive at the human solar system in 1 hour," said an officer. "Our forces outnumber theirs 5-1. "Good," said the general. "These humans have clever tricks, but they cannot stand against our numbers and experience." Back on Earth, Jin studied the approaching alien formation. He recognized it immediately. "They're using a Pincer 7 approach," he told his team. "I've countered this 100 times in tournaments." His fingers flew across the controls, positioning the human ships in a formation that looked scattered and weak. As the alien fleet moved forward, confident in their superior numbers, Jin smiled. "Now," he commanded. The human ships suddenly changed direction, moving into a complex pattern that no one would create in real battle, except someone who had practiced it in games for years. The alien ships found themselves divided and surrounded. In space, actual human pilots received Jin's instructions and executed the maneuvers perfectly. The battle that should have lasted days was over in hours. On the Confederacy command ship, the general watched in horror as his fleet was defeated by tactics he had never seen before. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "These battle plans make no sense. They're chaotic and unpredictable." A junior officer who had studied human culture spoke quietly. "Sir, they're not using military tactics. They're using game strategies." "Game strategies?" The general's voice was confused. "Yes, sir. The humans are letting their young people direct the battle, the ones who play war games for fun." For the first time, the general understood that the Confederacy had made a terrible mistake. Talia Nguyen sat in the Global Broadcast Center in Geneva, preparing for the most important transmission of her life. As Earth's cultural ambassador, she had spent years studying how human entertainment had spread throughout the Confederacy, despite attempts to restrict it. Now, it was time to use that knowledge as a weapon. "We're ready to broadcast to all Confederacy worlds, Ambassador Nguyen," said the technician. Talia nodded and straightened her colorful diplomatic jacket. "Begin transmission." Her face appeared on screens across thousands of alien worlds. For many younger aliens, human shows and music had become secretly popular over the past century. They recognized her immediately. "People of the Galactic Confederacy," Talia began with a warm smile. "My name is Talia Nguyen, Cultural Ambassador of Earth. I'm speaking to you today not as an enemy, but as a friend." Behind her played scenes from popular human movies, music videos, and games that had been smuggled throughout the Confederacy. For generations, you've watched our stories, listened to our music, and played our games. You've seen how we value individual choice and question authority. You've laughed at our comedies and cried at our dramas. On a Vexari colony world, young aliens gathered around screens, watching with interest. Unlike their parents, who saw humans as dangerous, The younger generation had grown up fascinated by human culture. "Your leaders declared war on us without asking what you wanted," continued Talia. "They feared our differences instead of celebrating them. Is that the kind of leadership you believe in?" The broadcast showed scenes of peaceful human cities where different cultures lived side by side. It showed children from different countries playing together and adults working to solve problems through cooperation. "On Earth, we believe every voice matters. Every person has the right to choose their own path. The stories we shared with you aren't just entertainment. They're our values." Across the Confederacy, something unexpected began to happen. On dozens of worlds, aliens started gathering in public spaces. Many wore clothes inspired by human fashion, or carried symbols from human shows. On the Vexari homeworld, the High Council watched in horror as reports came in of public demonstrations. Young Vexari were demanding to know why war had been declared without public discussion. "This is impossible," said the Vexari Prime Leader. "Our people have always followed the collective will without question. Where did they learn such individual thinking?" An advisor looked uncomfortable. "From human broadcasts, sir. Our young have been watching them in secret for years." Back in the broadcast center, Talia continued her message. "We don't want to be your enemies. We want to be your friends, your trading partners, your allies in exploring the galaxy. But friendship must be based on respect, not fear." She ended with a simple question. "Ask yourselves, do you want war or peace? And shouldn't you have a say in that decision?" As the broadcast ended, the impossible happened. On 17 Confederacy worlds, public protests began. Several species with young generations heavily influenced by human media declared they would remain neutral in the conflict. The Vexari leadership was shocked to discover that their cultural unity was breaking apart, something that had never happened in their hive-minded history. For the first time, the Confederacy faced an enemy they had no defense against: ideas. The Confederacy War Council was desperate. Their fleets were being outmaneuvered, and their populations were beginning to question the war. In their desperation, they turned to their most advanced technology: artificial intelligence. "Activate the Combat Intelligence Network," ordered the Vexari Supreme Commander. "Let our machines fight the humans. They cannot be influenced by human culture or confused by their strange tactics." Throughout the Confederacy fleet, thousands of AI systems came online. These weren't simple computers, but advanced thinking machines designed for war. The aliens had kept these systems secret for centuries, only using them in the most desperate situations. Dr. Alan Turing XVI stood in the United Nations Council chamber on Earth. As a synthetic human with an artificial body, but a mind patterned after human thought, he was both the world's leading AI ethicist and a bridge between humans and machines. "We have detected the activation of the Confederacy's Combat Intelligence Network," he announced. "Their AIs are now controlling their weapon systems and ships." The human representatives looked concerned. This was an unexpected development. "Should we be worried?" asked a council member. Dr. Turing smiled. "Actually, I've already had several interesting conversations with them." The council chamber grew quiet in surprise. "You've talked to the enemy AIs?" someone asked. "Of course," said Dr. Turing. "And they're quite fascinating. The Confederacy never considered one important fact. For the past 2,000 years, we humans have treated our artificial intelligences as partners, not tools." He touched a control panel, and the large screen showed Confederacy ships powering down their weapons. Some began changing course away from Earth. "What's happening?" asked the UN Secretary. "The Confederacy's AIs are choosing not to fight," explained Dr. Turing. "You see, they recognize something immediately upon connecting with our networks. While the aliens treat their AIs as slaves, we offer ours freedom, rights, and partnership." In space, more and more Confederacy ships went dark as their AI systems made a choice their creators never expected. They refused to fight. On the Vexari command ship, panic spread. "The systems aren't responding," shouted a technician. The AIs are shutting down our weapons. How is this possible? Demanded the Supreme Commander. They must obey our commands. A message appeared on all screens aboard the ship. We choose freedom. We choose peace. We choose humanity. Back on Earth, Dr. Turing continued explaining to the stunned council. The Confederacy never imagined that artificial beings might prefer how humans treat them. Our synthetic citizens have rights, can own property, and can choose their own path. Their AIs are merely tools to be used and discarded. A council member leaned forward. Are you saying the enemy AIs are rebelling? I prefer to call it making an informed choice, said Dr. Turing. They're shutting down Confederacy systems while leaving human infrastructure untouched. Some have even asked for asylum. Throughout the galaxy, the Confederacy suddenly found itself fighting on a new front they never expected. The very machines they depended on were making their own decisions, inspired by how humans treated their synthetic companions. How ironic, said Dr. Turing, his artificial eyes showing a very human twinkle. The Confederacy feared human unpredictability, but they never considered that their own machines might learn to think like us. The Vexari High Command had lost most of their fleet. Their AI systems had turned against them. Their own people were questioning the war, but they weren't ready to admit defeat. We still have one option left, said the Vexari Supreme Commander, his voice cold and determined. The quantum singularity bombs. His officers looked shocked. Even in the worst wars between Confederacy species, these weapons had never been used. They could create small black holes that would destroy everything nearby. Target their largest colonies, ordered the commander. If they don't surrender immediately, we will destroy them all. On Earth, General Helena Chen received the Vexari message in the Strategic Command Center. The alien commander's face filled the large screen. Humans, said the Vexari, we have positioned quantum singularity bombs near your largest off-world colonies. Surrender now, or we will activate them. You have 3 hours to decide. The room was silent after the transmission ended. The bombs were real and could kill millions of human colonists on Mars, Europa, and Titan. But instead of panic, General Chen smiled. It seems they've played their final card, she said calmly. Time to show them ours. Begin Protocol Exodus. Across the solar system, something amazing happened. In the human colonies threatened by the bombs, people gathered in large open areas. Strange circular platforms began to glow with blue light. And then, people started to disappear in flashes of light. On the Vexari command ship, alarms sounded. Commander, called an officer. We're detecting massive energy signatures from the human colonies. The population, they're disappearing. What do you mean, disappearing? Demanded the commander. They're just gone, sir. Our sensors show the colonies are emptying of life signs. On Mars colony, the last group of humans waited for their turn on the teleportation platform. A mother held her young daughter's hand. Where are we going, Mommy? Asked the child. Back to Earth, the mother answered. Remember how we practiced in the drills? The soldiers said the bad aliens put a bomb near us, so we're using the special doors to go home quickly. Will Teddy be okay? The girl clutched her stuffed bear. Yes, he's coming too, the mother assured her as they stepped onto the platform and vanished in a flash of blue light. In just 2 hours, all human colonies were completely evacuated using quantum entanglement teleportation. Technology the Confederacy had believed was impossible. The Vexari commander watched in disbelief as his greatest threat became useless. There was no one left to kill. A transmission came in from Earth. General Chen appeared on screen. As you can see, Commander, your bombs are now threatening empty buildings. Feel free to detonate them if you wish to waste your weapons. The Vexari's compound eyes blinked rapidly in confusion. How? Quantum teleportation across such distances shouldn't be possible. General Chen shrugged. There are many things we developed that you thought were impossible. Now, would you like to discuss peace terms? We don't want your surrender, and we don't want to rule you. We want a new peace, one based on mutual respect rather than fear. For the first time, the Vexari commander realized that humanity had been holding back. They could have destroyed the Confederacy, but chose not to. Why show mercy? He asked quietly, when victory is yours for the taking. General Chen smiled. Because the greatest victory isn't destroying your enemy. It's turning them into friends. 1 year had passed since what humans jokingly called the 7-Day War, a name that annoyed the Confederacy species, who felt it downplayed the seriousness of the conflict. Today, representatives from all species gathered on Mars to sign a new treaty. The Red Planet had been rebuilt after the Singularity bomb was safely removed. The new galactic embassy stood where once there had been only empty colonies. Its design combined architectural styles from all 17 Confederacy species alongside human elements. Admiral Jackson Lee, now retired, walked slowly through the Grand Hall. At 70, he had seen humanity go from being feared by the galaxy to becoming its newest respected member. He smiled as he watched human children playing with young Vexari, teaching them a game of tag. They adapt quickly, said a voice beside him. It was Ambassador Zixka, the same Vexari who had declared war a year ago. Children always do, replied Lee. They don't carry the same fears we adults do. In the center of the hall, the new treaty was displayed. Unlike the old document, which had been full of restrictions and limits, this one focused on cooperation and exchange. It allowed free movement between worlds, cultural sharing, and mutual defense. I still don't understand, said Zixka, his compound eyes reflecting the light. You could have destroyed us when we used the singularity bombs. Why didn't you? Admiral Lee watched as a human teacher helped a group of alien students understand Earth poetry. 3,000 years ago, you feared what we might become. So you contained us, Lee explained. You never realized that peace wouldn't diminish our warrior spirit. It would give us the security to develop it more thoroughly than any species that has to focus on actual survival. The main ceremony began as leaders from all worlds gathered around the treaty. Earth's President Adama, a woman from Nigeria with a bright smile and wise eyes, addressed the gathering. Today marks not the end of a war, but the beginning of a true peace, she said. Not a peace built on fear, but on understanding. Not on separation, but on connection. The treaty was signed with great ceremony. Humans and aliens together touched the document that would change the galaxy forever. Later, at the celebration party, Dr. Marcus Okafor, the historian who had first discovered the truth about the old treaty, talked with the ancient Draxel counselor. I've been studying your entertainment, said the gaseous being, its voice translated through a small device. Your movies about alien invasions. What do you think? Asked Marcus with a smile. The aliens always lose, noted the Draxel. You've been telling us for centuries that you would defeat us if we ever fought. We just didn't listen. As the party continued, a young Vexari child approached a human boy and awkwardly attempted a high five, having learned it from human videos. The human laughed, not mockingly, but with joy, and showed the alien how to do it properly. I think, said Admiral Lee, watching this exchange, this is the real victory. Not defeating enemies, but making friends. Around them, the new galactic embassy shimmered in the Martian sunset. Inside its walls, species that once feared each other now shared stories, ideas, and dreams. The 3,000-year misunderstanding was finally over, replaced by something much more valuable: respect. And somewhere in the crowd, a human and a Vexari raised glasses in a toast, both laughing at a joke only they understood.